All right, kindergarten art friends, it's time to create our next piece of art together this week. We are going to be creating a paper weaving, and it's going to be a lot of fun and a really cool new skill to learn. And when we learn about weaving, it's going to be something you're going to do every single year throughout the rest of your art career here. So it's going to be a fun new experiment that you're going to be able to take and use in lots of different new ways. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about color, because we're going to use color really specifically this year, or this project. So let me find my yellow glasses. So we want to talk about warm colors and cool colors. When we talked about our color mixing sheets, we started coloring our color families. We colored our primary and secondary color families, and we talked about what happens when we mix one primary and one primary together. Do you remember what we make? The secondary. So when I mix my yellow and my blue together, I make a secondary color, and my secondary color was green. When I mix my yellow and my red together, I get a secondary color, and that secondary color is orange. But our colors have feelings that we associate with them. Because if we think about, if I draw a sun, what does the sun make you feel? Does it make you feel warm and hot? Sure. What colors do we use to color in that sun? Is it yellow, orange, maybe even some red? So when we think about the colors, yellow, orange, and red, those are the colors that make us feel warm, because those are the colors we use to color in the things that are warm. So if I told you to draw a picture of a campfire, I bet you would use yellow, orange, and red to draw your campfire, because those are warm colors. Those are colors that make us feel warm. There's also colors that make us feel cool. Blue is one of those cool colors. I want you to imagine that you were outside playing in the snow for a really, really long time, making the world's biggest snowman. And I bet when you come inside, your lips might be a little bluish. They might even be a little purplish from being out in the cold so long. There's an artist named Picasso who was famous for a blue period, where he painted only using colors of blue. And a lot of those pictures make us feel a little cold to think about, maybe even a little sad. So we'll talk more about how colors have feelings, colors have temperatures. So when we talk about the warm colors, I bet you already remembering that we think about the colors that we use to color in the sun and fire. When you think about the cool temperatures, I want you to think about the colors that make you feel a little chilly. Those colors are going to be your green, your blue, and your purple. Okay, so we're going to use our colors in this art piece really specifically. We're going to have some parts of our art that are going to be done only using our cool colors. And the other parts of our art we'll make only using warm colors. And then when we weave them together, we'll mix them up as we go. And you'll see what I'm talking about as we work together this week. For us to get started on this piece, you need some supplies ready to go. First, you need some stuff that I sent home this week on Friday. I sent this piece of paper home that already has some lines drawn. You're going to ignore the lines as we get started, but they'll be really important later on. There were also some strips of paper. You had some strips in the warm colors and some white strips as well. Those I want you to set off to the side, but keep them handy. We're going to start today doing a little bit of play art inspired by one of my favorite book authors, Hervé Tullet. And I'm going to share a book with you later this week, one of his books that he wrote. But for us to get started, I want you to get your box of crayons and your paper. I am going to follow along with a little Hervé Tullet prompt, and I'm going to tell you different things to draw with your crayons on your paper. And it's going to be like a Simon Says, where you're going to follow right along and do the things that I do. Now, you're still the artist, so you'll get to make some art decisions too. It's not just going to be up to me, it's going to be up to you also. When we're going to draw, you're going to take this piece of paper and you're going to unfold it. And then the lines, you're going to put those down on the table. We're going to cover up the lines for right now. Those lines are for cutting later, but we don't want those to show up on our artwork. We're going to do our artwork on the other side of the paper. To get started on our artwork, we're going to make a watercolor resist. I'm going to teach you all about how to use your watercolors safely and nice and neatly, and how we clean our brushes before we switch colors. But the first part today will just involve your crayons and your paper. So let's get started. All right, I have my crayons and my paper ready, and remember, I'm doing it the line side is facing down. I don't want those lines to show on my artwork. Now we're just going to use our crayons, and you're going to follow some directions with me. I'm going to do it too. So if you really are stuck on how you want yours to look, you can always follow along with me, or you can make yours not look like mine, but still remember, we're going to follow some directions together. So go ahead and get your crayons out and have them nearby you. If you have other colors of crayons at home, you can use those, but it is important that we're using crayons. Crayons are an important step to doing our watercolor together. We're going to try to work just in our cool colors for this piece. So let's remind ourselves what our cool colors are. We'll get to the warm colors later on, but for this section, let's focus on our cool colors. So we have three main cool colors. Okay, I have my violet or purple. Violet is the artist name for purple. I have my blue. I have my green. You could also set your black crayon out here to give you another option. If you have other crayons at home, white is a really cool crayon to use. It'll be really fun when we do the watercolor part. But if you have other crayons available, you might have some other different shades of blues and greens that you can add to your pile here. Okay, but we're just going to focus on cool colors for this section. So I'm going to tell you something to draw, and you're going to pick up a cool color and you are going to draw it on your paper. And you can listen to my directions, and sometimes I'll give directions about how big it should be, but if I don't, you get to decide how big it is. Okay, so let's get started and we'll see what we make together. All right, are you ready? Here we go. I want to see a dot. Now I want to see a dot that's a little bigger. So you get to follow along with me. You can change your crayon color each time, but you decide, where is your dot going to be? How much bigger is that dot going to be? Where will you put it on your paper? Let's do one more dot. This time, make your dot as far away from your other dots as possible. So mine's going to be all the way down here. It's off my paper. Can you see it? Okay. Now I want to see a circle. A bigger circle. Can you make a circle that goes off of your paper? How about a circle inside another circle? Now, how about a circle surrounded by dots? That's a lot of circles and dots. Let's mix it up some more. How about a wavy line? Switch your colors. What about another wavy line? What about a triangle? I'm going to make mine in white. It might be hard to see it right now, but just wait until later. Can you make a square? Maybe another square inside a square. Can you make one more square inside that square? Now look at the blank space on your paper still. We want to fill our paper. What might you add next? Find a blank space and add 2 shapes in your blank space. Pick a shape somewhere on your paper and color it in. Remember, if I'm ever moving too fast, pause the video. Is there another space you want to color in? Okay, we should be working on filling up our space. I still see another space over here that I need to fill up. So I'm going to make a circle, and I'm going to fill that circle with a pattern. I'm going to make a circle filled with some zigzags. So make a shape and fill it with a pattern in some of your space that you have. I like the way that looks. Find another shape to add a pattern in. Can you add some spirals on your paper? Okay, I think my work is full of some different places, spaces, and beautiful art, but I still see a couple spots. So I want you to decide, what else does your art need? Add some more shapes, lines, colors, patterns to help fill up the rest of your space. So this is where you can make some of your own artistic decisions on your work. Okay, as you're working on filling your space, you should have a whole large piece of paper that's filled with colors, lines, shapes, patterns. You should have some spaces that are colored in and some spaces that are empty. Think about going back with your white and adding a couple bit more designs to your work. These will surprise you in just a little bit. All right. I think that this piece is really full. I'm going to set it off the side for a moment and we're going to talk about your watercolors. Okay, before you get started with your watercolors, we should talk about how to use our watercolors correctly. I sent you home a watercolor container. They don't all look the same, but they all have the same basic things. You have a paintbrush that comes with it. I also sent back a really nice paintbrush for you to use. So I recommend using the green one that I sent to your house for this project because it'll really allow you to paint really nicely. The paintbrushes that come with these aren't always as nice. So you have your green paintbrush I sent you, your watercolor palette with all your paint colors, and you need a little dish with water. I'm using a dish that has a nice heavy bottom. This is a little clay pot that was made in the art room years ago. So you want something that is not too tall and that it has a heavy bottom so that if you accidentally hit it with your hand, you're not going to knock it over and spill it everywhere. And then I have some paper towels. Paper towels are important because they're going to help you to clean your brush. So we call these paints watercolors because water is so important for us to be able to use them. If I try to paint with this right now without any water on my brush, it's just going to make a big sticky mess. Okay, so this is the pigment, that's the color, but it needs water to turn it into watercolor paint. Okay, so I need to dip my brush in the water first and then put that water on, and I just kind of gently mix it around. And then you can see that the paint will start to fill up my brush. And if I want it to be a really dark color, then I use just a little bit of water. But if I really want a nice, good, thin paint consistency, which is what we want with our watercolors, then we're going to dip it in water a couple times and mix it up. Before I switch colors, it's important that I clean my brush. We know from mixing colors that if I don't clean my brush, I'm going to mix those colors together. And that's not what I want to do. I want to keep my watercolor palette nice and clean. So in order to clean my brush, I move it back and forth like I'm painting the bottom of my little cup of water here. Okay, if I go back and forth and paint the bottom, that helps to spread all the little bristles, all the little hairs that are in my paintbrush tip. It spreads them out and helps get the paint that might be stuck in between them out into the water. Then I can paint on my paper towel. I can see that my paintbrush is clean because it's not painting green on my paper towel. So I know that my paintbrush is clean and ready for a new color. So I'll dip it, and then I can move to my next color, and I'll put the water there and get some more until I mix it up nice and neat and create a good color. Because if I were to use black and not clean my paintbrush very well, I'm going to turn all these colors into a blackish color, and I don't want that. I want to be able to paint with the colors that I have. Okay, so I put some blue on here, and blue is a good color to start with. And let's get back to how to use them to complete our project today. Okay, so we're going to end up painting this whole piece of paper today, and we're going to continue to use only our cool colors. So that means when you paint this in, you're going to stick with your greens, your blues, and your purples in your paint. Your greens, your blues, and your purples in your paint dish. Okay, we're going to save the warm colors for the other papers. This is all a painting done completely with cool colors. Okay, so I'm going to get some good water on my brush. I'm going to get some paint. And when I paint, I want to go back and forth nice and gentle. So remember I said we were going to make a watercolor resist? Do you notice that the spots where I colored with my crayon, they're going to stay showing through? The wax in the crayon is resisting the water of the watercolor. So what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and with a light color, because we're doing water, we're going to start to paint that in. Oh, do you see my surprise? Have you found any surprises yet? When we use the white crayon, it's going to keep that spot white. So everywhere I drew with the white crayon is now going to be a surprise place on my painting. So, whoop, there's another one. So I can also clean my brush. Remember, I'm going to paint the bottom of my cup. I'm going to check it on the water or on my paper towel. I see clear water. That means I know I can switch colors. So sometimes when I'm painting, I just go ahead and dip it straight into the water and just add more water, because that was kind of a dark green. I want to get an even lighter color. And even as I'm painting, my colors will mix a little bit on my paper. And it's better to mix the colors on my paper than to be mixing the colors on my paint palette. I want to have nice, clean, crisp colors to choose from on my paint palette. So your task today to finish up is to finish painting your watercolor, cool color resist, abstract art background. We made all of those things. Yeah, our art is all of those things. It is abstract art, right? It's not really a picture of anything specific. It's a picture that we made with shapes, lines. We're adding some more color now. Now it's really important when I'm getting to the edge, I'm being very careful. Our art supplies should not make a mess in our house. They shouldn't make it a mess at school either. It's our job to make sure we clean them up. So one way is to work as cleanly as possible. When we're painting and we're trying to fill in space, do you notice, just like on my markers, when I wanted to make a thick line, I used the side of my marker. Well, I'm using the side of my paintbrush to make nice big long lines that are going to help fill my paper up. Clean my brush, check and make sure that I'm ready to switch colors. I haven't done any purple yet. It's time for some purple in this piece. So just like coloring in, when we trace around the outside first, that's a good way to help keep the paint where we want it to go. And since it's watercolor resist, that helps us keep the paint where we want it to go even more. Okay, I have a lot of work to do. You have a lot of work to do, so I want you to focus on finishing till you color the whole thing in. It's okay if there's a few spots that you want to leave white on your space. You can see I'm going to leave some of my spirals white, and so I'm painting around them carefully. But I want to see you pretty much fill this whole space in. And remember, we're doing this all cool colors, so our greens, our blues, and our purples. Tomorrow, meet me back here with your piece and we'll talk about the next steps and we'll learn what we're going to do with our warm colors to complement the art we did today. All right, I've fully painted in my piece. I left a few little spots whites. You know what? In fact, I'm going to go back and add a little bit more. You see a spot I wanted to add? A little color to some of my concentric circles and my concentric squares. But as I'm finishing up here, I'm already thinking about what I need to do to clean up. It's your responsibility to clean up your piece as you finish. So I need to make sure my brush is all the way clean. My piece I need to set safely out of the way to dry. So ask an adult, where's the best place for your watercolor to dry? We also need to carry it carefully. You see the spots that are really wet will drip when we carry them. So maybe the best space for your watercolor to dry is just sitting exactly where it is. As long as you didn't put too much water on your piece, which if you're just dipping your brush in the water to get the water, you shouldn't have too much. So maybe the best place is just to let it sit and it won't take too long to dry. Otherwise, you need to ask a grown-up where to move it. So I'm going to set it behind me on my table. Next, we need to talk about how to clean up. I did a really nice job of keeping my watercolors nice and clean. I hope yours did the same. It's a little wet on the colors that I used, but that's no big deal. That will dry out. My brush I need to clean. So again, I'm painting the bottom of my little water dish. Okay, and then I'm testing it to make sure it's all the way clean. Your nice new paintbrush can stay in your watercolors for the next time that you use them, and then you close the lid. My dish of water needs to go to the sink to be poured out. I need to make sure I talk with the adult at home about what's the safest way for me to do that, to make sure I don't make a mess in my house. I know that I can go ahead and do that myself because my sink is right behind me. But if your sink is farther away from your workspace, maybe you need an adult's help to make sure that we don't make a mess at our homes. After that, I'm going to throw my paper towels away and make sure that I go ahead and wipe down my workspace so that it's nice and clean and I did not make a mess.